The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters. Welcome back to the Personal Safety Show. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, your host. My websites are firearmmentor.com and stress, STRESS, the number 2, logic, LOGIC.com. The Firearm Mentor website kind of obviously is where I market my firearms training, and Stress to Logic is where I market my keynote speaking opportunities, where I go to conferences and talk about how to overcome the human stress response, manage agitated people, and communicate in conflict situations. So check out my websites. Also, my electronic business card is my name, Marcus Melnick. That is MarcusMelnick.com. I'm going to continue on the legal motif that we're on. And the federal Supreme Court had a unanimous 9-0 decision in United States Supreme Court, in Dilla versus Texas, which addressed the issue of whether individuals can sue states in federal court for compensation under the Takings Clause of the Fifth Amendment. And remember, I am not an attorney, but the lawsuit stemmed from a 2017 incident where a highway median barrier was built to prevent flooding during Hurricane Harvey, which inadvertently caused damage to private properties by redirecting stormwaters. So how does this affect the Second Amendment? Well, Second Amendment supporters and organizations can now sue states, which is going to help the argument moving forward. 2 times a year, July 1st and January 1st, there are new laws that take effect. And there are several new laws that are going to be taking effect in the next few weeks, and I'm going to cover them here. First of all, driver's license for undocumented immigrants. Undocumented immigrants will soon be able to acquire a driver's license after House Bill 3882 was signed into law last year. The new law will allow immigrants to get a standard 4-year license to replace the temporary visitor driver's license, or TVDL. Immigrants will be required to pass a driving test, provide proof of Illinois residency for at least a year, and provide proof of car insurance. Illinois Secretary of State Alexi Giannoulias, whose driver's office issues licenses, said the change will make roads safer and reduce stigma. I really don't know how it's going to make roads safer, because it's putting more drivers on the road, and statistically, that's more dangerous. So what he said was, quote, "It'll help prevent the stigma, instances of discrimination, and problems that TVDLs have been known to cause, while making the road safer and enabling immigrants to use a standard license as identification for basic necessities like filling prescriptions or renting an apartment," end quote, he said last year. Okay, I see that. I see the value in at least providing them ways to contribute to society. Also coming into play July 1st is the Freelance Worker Protection Act. That was House Bill 1122, and it was designed to provide protections to freelance workers. These are your 1099s, your temps. Freelance workers are defined in the law as, quote, "a person who is hired or retained as an independent contractor by a contracting entity to provide products or services in Illinois, or a contracting entity located in Illinois, in exchange for an amount equal to or greater than $500, either in a single contract or when aggregated with all contracts for products and services between the same contracting entity and the freelance worker during the immediately 120 preceding days." The bill includes punishment for contracting entities that do not pay on time, worker protections from discrimination, and a formalized complaint procedure, among other changes. Child labor law is now going to apply to influencers. Senate Bill 1782 extended existing child labor laws to social media influencers. The act says that any child under the age of 16 is considered to be doing the work of vlogging if at least 30% of the vlogger's compensated video content produced within a 30-day period included the likeness, name, or photograph of the minor, and the page meets a payment threshold through the site, the content is published. So if those criteria are met, then the child is protected under Illinois child labor laws. There's a few other laws that are on the books. Increase in higher education grants through the state's Community Behavioral Health Care Professional Loan Repayment Program, and provisions to ensure community input on standardized testing in local school districts. Luckily, none of these affect firearm owners, at least on firearm issues. That is wonderful, as we are still reeling from the PICA, Protect Illinois Communities Act, or as I call it, the PU Act, which stinks. And that is also being challenged in court as we speak. Last month, Merritt Street Media, which is Dr. Phil's new network, it's not available, at least at Comcast, in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, but you can access all the shows online. Steve Harvey's going to have a show. Dr. Phil has his typical talk show, which is quite interesting. He had Donald Trump on. He had a member of Hamas on. It's very, very cutting edge. But there's also a news program on that channel, and I was part of a story of training Jewish people in firearms. So the reporter asked me, and this is in the interview, how much of an increase have I seen? And I said, it's about 40%. And that was a guesstimate. So what did I do last night? Well, I looked at, as best I could, to determine religions based on names of my clients for the last 2 years. Prior to Hamas sending rockets to Israel and attacking Israel, about 7% of my clientele were Jewish. After October 7th, that percentage changed to 26%. Why is this significant? Well, Jewish people make up less than 2% of the population, first of all. And second of all, typically Jewish people are aligned with the Democratic Party. So I've had a number of people who are Jewish in my classes who've gone to the Million Moms March, who are very active in Moms Demand Action, have campaigned or lobbied for more restrictive gun laws, and now all of a sudden they find themselves wanting and needing a firearm for protection. This to me is fascinating. It's quite interesting. I think people are fed up with the police not being able to protect them. And there are 2 federal Supreme Court cases that say that the police do not have a duty to protect individual citizens. They are there for the public. Private security, if contracted, has a duty to protect private citizens depending upon the contract. So the police, I've always said, I love the police. I used to work in multiple departments in a support role, doing risk management or financial management, grants, accreditation, policy writing, all sorts of stuff like that. And cops really don't like it when non-cops tell them what to do, but I was the guy doing that. So for some, I was very popular because I involved everyone in contributing to policy development. But some people just, I'm not going to work with a civilian. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And the funny thing is, at this department I'm mentioning, and I loved working there, I probably had more experience dealing with violence than these people did. It was in the northern suburbs in an affluent community, and I had come from school security and hospital security. And most people don't know this, but in healthcare security and safety, we are constantly faced with violence. There is violence in the emergency room from people who are intoxicated with alcohol and under the influence of drugs, as well as psychiatric units where people often act out violently. And then there's a concept in healthcare security called ICU psychosis. ICU standing for intensive care unit. And that's when someone, very nice person, could be you, could be me, is in intensive care. They are unaware of their surroundings and they're fighting to live. They're probably being counterproductive. So in other words, they're pulling out IVs, they're pulling out their breathing tubes, they are trying to get out of bed when they're a fall hazard. And oftentimes these people are restrained in the bed until they can regain control of their activities, and that means come to mentally, psychologically. And it's happened. I've had to restrain people that have just had open heart surgery because they're trying to pull out sutures. Really, it was for their own safety, and I've done that. So every day I had 2 or 3 major incidents where I had to restrain someone, handcuff them, take them down, battle with family members, particularly those who are distraught, or associate gang members who come into the hospital to support the person who got shot or to finish the job. And so I have actually a couple articles out there. One is Managing Violent Patients, and the other one is Gangs in Hospitals, all published in the 1990s in the Journal on Healthcare Protection Management. So here I joined this kind of sleepy town, and I'm being told, you don't know about use of force. Oh, really? I used to train in use of force. And today, here's the funny thing. Today, I'm a use of force instructor. When I was at that department, I wanted to become a firearms armorer, and I was laughed at. You can't be an armorer. You're not a police officer. Well, I got news. The people who are armorers who work in gun stores or sporting goods stores, they're not cops either. I said, I don't want to tell the cops how to shoot or teach them how to shoot. I just want to work on firearms. So I did. I went out on my own. I took a vacation day. I paid for the Glock Armorers class. And the great thing about Glock is they typically don't change in their makeup. And I went through the class. And then all of a sudden, I get people knocking at my office door. Hey, I got a problem with my Glock. Can you help me? Can you replace a spring? Can you replace a trigger? And the answer was, yes, I can, but I'm not going to because the department did not recognize me as an armorer, and I did not want to work on department-owned firearms and screw something up. So I didn't do that. But the funny thing is, when I worked at a gun store years later, I had these same police officers who were laughing at me at my perceived lack of knowledge and coming to me for advice, assistance, firearms questions, and I became their expert. So I kind of giggled a little bit to myself. Through both Firearm Mentor and Stress to Logic, I have several upcoming speaking engagements that I wanted to share with my listeners. First of all, my next public-facing concealed carry class is going to be July 20th and 21st in the northwest suburbs, and you can sign up by going to firearmmentor.com/classes. I have a couple of other speaking opportunities coming up. A lot of these are closed, or you have to go to a conference or be a part of a group. So for a Jewish congregation, I am teaching in a couple weeks, or actually in a week, Keeping Calm in the Face of Anti-Semitism, and that is my Overcoming the Hot Stress Mess keynote, but it is adapted to when someone receives threats or threatening or racism, and it can really be applied to any group, African American, Hispanic, Asian, Jewish, doesn't matter. I mentioned the concealed carry class in July. Also, there is later this month the International Association of Business Communicators. There's a conference. It's downtown Chicago. You can look up IAB as in boy, C as in Charlie. And that seminar, I'm a speaker at a conference, is called Overcoming the Hot Stress Mess. Then also in July, I'm doing a firearms safety class for a bunch of retired people in Northbrook at the public library. And in September, there is a group called the Living Well Intergenerational Social Club, and I'm going to be speaking to them about street smarts. And that social club is more elderly people. So I'm going to talk about scams and cybersecurity, but I'm going to make it so that the regular person will hear it. So we don't talk about multi-factor authentication. Instead, we talk about, hey, set it up so your phone gets a text when you're logging into a website. And that is multi-factor authentication, but instead of using big fancy words, I'm going to speak so people can understand. And that's not me dumbing it down. That's my ability to take complex ideas and break them down into easy to understand, easy to digest, smaller concepts. I've put in for a number of other conferences, including the National Alliance for Mental Illness State Conference. I believe that's in September, and there's some October conferences also that I submitted to speak at. If you're interested in hearing me speak, or if you know someone who books speakers, please reach out to me at my electronic business card at Marcus, M-A-R-C-U-S, Melnick, MELNICK.com. I'd love the opportunity. This is me pursuing my dream. I would love the opportunity to speak to someone who books people for conferences. Well, people, if you didn't figure this out before, I am a nerd. I am a gun nerd, and I'm a statistics nerd. My master's degree is actually in criminal justice research and evaluation, which is heavily involved with criminal statistics. So I really love looking at trends. And one of the things that I recently discovered is different states have very high percentage of concealed carry permit holders. And I want to share that information with everyone. So nationwide, as of 2023, there are just shy of 23 million concealed carry permit holders. But that doesn't take into account people who are not required to obtain a permit to carry in the 29 states that have adopted constitutional carry, which is interesting. So this is only the states that you need a license. And the percentages are very interesting. Number one, Alabama has 27.8% concealed carry holders, Indiana 23.4%, Colorado 16.5%, Pennsylvania is 15.4%, Iowa is 13.8%, Tennessee is 13.1%, Florida is 13%, but that's for residential permits only. Connecticut is 12.6%, and Washington is 11.6%. So in 17 states, more than 10% of the population have concealed carry permits, while 14 states and D.C. are below 5%, with Alabama being the highest rate of concealed carry permits and Indiana being the second highest rate. I thought that was interesting. New York, California, Rhode Island, Maine, New Jersey, and Hawaii all have less than 1%. I imagine that's going to change in New York with the new New York State Rifle Association Supreme Court case. Vermont is the only state that doesn't issue concealed carry permits. 6 states now have more than 1 million permit holders, including Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Florida was the first state to reach 2 million concealed carry permits. States tend to vary drastically when it comes to crime rates versus gun ownership. For example, Washington, D.C. is heavily restricted in terms of firearms, with only about 1% of the population having concealed carry permits, yet it's ranked for number 1 for crime rates, and that's not just the elected officials. While D.C. is technically not a state, the data shows it is a large metropolitan area, and it's at the top of the list. Tennessee ranked number 7 on the states with the highest percentage of concealed carry permit holders, while Memphis is considered the second most dangerous city in the nation after Detroit. Furthermore, only 2% of New Mexicans have a concealed carry permit, while the state is ranked number 2 in crime rates, with Albuquerque being the 12th most dangerous city in the nation. Vermont does not require a license or training to carry a firearm, yet they are ranked down on the list as 44th of the most dangerous states. As there's a deeper dive into statistics, it consistently shows that the biggest cities are what determines the state ranking for crime rates. This is interesting considering 46% of Americans that own a firearm live in rural areas, while 19% live in urban areas. The obvious importance in today's society of gun ownership is, of course, self-defense. The right to self-defense is inherent, with women making up the fastest growing demographic of gun ownership. It was Ronald Reagan that once said, "The gun is the great equalizer." That quote could not ring truer for not only a woman, but someone like me who is not actually physically fit. In 2022, stats show that 22% of women have reported owning a firearm, which is a 9% increase from 2008. With 1 in 3 women reporting some form of physical or sexual violence, this number is only likely to increase. Additionally, 67% of people have cited protection as the #1 reason for owning firearms, while 4 in 10 gun owners reported that owning firearms are used for hunting purposes. However, an important aspect that's kind of fallen to the wayside as the culture has shifted through the millennia. Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story famously wrote, "The right of the citizens to keep and bear arms has been justly considered, and the palladium of liberties of a republic, since it offers strong moral check against the usurpation and arbitrary power of rulers, and will generally, even if these are successful in the first incident, enable the people to resist and triumph over them." While self-defense is undoubtedly important and necessary in firearm ownership, we must not forget the reason that our founding fathers included the Second Amendment and the how and why they decided on that inclusion. For those of us who are fans of Marvel, or at least who are Gen Xers, maybe grew up watching Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk, remember the line of, "You wouldn't like me if I'm angry." So, avoiding conflict, a guide to effective self-defense strategies. Don't get wound up. It's not my circus, not my monkeys. That's the mantra. Don't get entangled in problems that aren't yours. You are not SEAL Team Marcus. When faced with potential conflict, it's crucial to assess whether the situation truly warrants your involvement. If not, it's time to prioritize safety and strategic withdrawal as a key component to any personal protection plan. And there was a dude who cut me off not too long ago. This is not a road rage incident, and I honked. And he took his hands out the window, like the praying emoji, or that you would put your hands together and pray, kind of as a thank you or I'm sorry. And wow, that was awesome. So next time I'm involved in something like that, I'm going to use that gesture as well. It was a great, great disarming gesture. So personal protection plan has to have situational awareness. You need to stay vigilant and attuned to your surroundings. And you might say, "Oh, I'm always attuned to my surroundings." Baloney. Ever look at your phone? Yeah, you're not in tune with your surroundings. Ever try to open a produce bag at the grocery store? Ever tried to do self-checkout? And it doesn't work. And you're getting frustrated and you're super focused on the scanning machine that's in front of you. Yeah, you don't have situational awareness. Also, make every effort to sidestep potentially dangerous confrontations, and force is a last resort. You have to ensure that it is justified and proportionate to the threat. Illinois law allows you, or I should say may allow you, to use a firearm if somebody else is acting in a way that will cause death or great bodily harm, and those acts are imminent or immediate. So we all know what death is. Great bodily harm is different for everyone. It is a nebulous gray area term. But I'm just saying that someone who's smaller in stature may be able to deploy their firearm sooner because they would get injured before a big tough guy or big tough woman. What you have to do is figure out what are your hidden disabilities. And I have some obvious disabilities and I have some hidden ones. My obvious disabilities are I need glasses to see. That is a disability. And I don't mean a recognized disability where you can get Social Security. I mean, what will prevent you from succeeding in a fight? Another one of my visible disabilities is my weight and my age. Now, people have invisible disabilities. I had a student in my class this weekend. He has a titanium rod as a bone in his leg. He was roller skating. He slipped. He fell. He broke his leg. Out of town, needed surgery, put in a titanium bar. He can't run. I have another student. He's got one arm. So he can deploy his firearm, at least in my opinion, my non-legal opinion. I am not an attorney. They can deploy their firearms quicker. For me, I don't have a thyroid. I don't have the energy, stamina to get in a long, drawn-out fight. There's a country song that says, "I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was." And that's kind of how I feel. So with that said, please, if you see stuff going on and you have an inkling to get involved, the best way to do that is to anonymously call 911. Why do I say anonymously? Well, when I was in elementary school, it was either 4th or 5th grade, I was being driven home by my mom. We were right outside Old Orchard Shopping Center, and there was an elderly woman crossing the street. There was a red light. She had the green. The car had the red light, didn't see the red light, and hit her, and she flew 30 feet into the air. One shoe went one way, one shoe went in another, and she was killed. And this wasn't a crime, but what my mom did, freaking out but having her wits about her, is she called 911 and gave her name. And all of a sudden, she started getting subpoenas because she was a witness to this. She had to take off time from work, was not compensated, and I don't really know what happened because I was a little kid, but that's why I say call anonymously. You don't want to get involved in a case, particularly if the people are gangbangers and they are going to retaliate. When I worked in private security, I did have an employee who saw some crime with a gang, called it in. Her house got firebombed. They threw a Molotov cocktail through her front picture window. Her dog, her Rottweiler, saved everyone's life and this was middle of the night, by alerting everyone that there was a problem. So don't get involved. Now, everyone has their line in the sand. My line in the sand is if I see criminal sexual assault occurring, I will get involved. That's my line in the sand. I've never seen it. Hopefully, I never will. Hopefully, no one ever will. But with that said, please stay safe and tune in next week. Also, have a wonderful Father's Day. Thank you for listening.
We have monthly concealed carry license CCL classes in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. Dates can be seen at firearmmentor.com/classes. If you have a question, we can be reached at www.firearmmentorcard.com. That is our electronic business card, has all of our contact information and links in it. It's the easiest way to get a hold of us. Until next time, stay safe out there, and I'll see you at the shooting range. This is Marcus Melnick from Firearm Mentor signing off. The views expressed are not those of local community broadcasting, WYML LP, or its management, volunteers, or underwriters.